Alright, Rematch. Beta's out again for this weekend. I've had a chance to play it. Actually went through the whole quick match rigmarole. I think in this beta they start you at level 5, and then you have to get to level 10 before you can play ranked matches, which is a smart move. They've made a few changes, nothing crazy. I'm going to talk about the positives and the negatives in terms of where I think the game stands right now. Positives, I like the changes to the deflection on goalkeeper clearances. Previously, players could just kind of sit there and deflect the ball and knock it back down and kind of continue their attack. Now they can still deflect it, but it's guaranteed to go forward. So at the very least, we have that. That's all well and good. I prefer if they couldn't deflect it at all. I think we need to get to that point. But, I'll take this for now. Secondly, I like the changes to the slide tackle. I've definitely noticed a reduction in their power. Like, they're not as fast as sprinting. They don't go as far, and it looks like there's a bit more of a cooldown. So players still kind of overuse it, but you definitely see them getting beat more cleanly now when they slide and miss. That's good. And then it looks like the Rainbow Flick may have gotten a slight cooldown nerf. I've kind of noticed that when players use it and they kind of misread the defenders can pretty easily just win the ball, as opposed to them being able to use it and then they lose possession and then they can immediately act again. That's good as well. I heard it got a stamina cost increase as well, but I haven't noticed. It's not a move I really use because I'm a pass first player and not a trick first player like a lot of people. That's not something I use all that often. That looks good too. Let's talk about the negative though, because this game still needs work. I have my thoughts on whether or not it's even going to attract a big following, but in terms of the negatives, the people who actually play it, goalkeepers still have too much power. They got nerfed slightly. So what's going on now? So they have slightly less range when they dive, and they're more likely to knock the ball out of play. But I feel like 9 out of 10 times when they dive, the ball needs to get bounced back into play. Because if we're going for realism, and then obviously Rematch is kind of more on the realistic side, minus things like the box, the arena style box, indoor football style there. When goalkeepers dive, they're generally trying to get a hand on the ball, so they're generally punching it back into play. And I feel like that needs to happen for this game, because as it stands right now, shooting on target is not the best way to attack the goal. Generally, you want to do something where you're trying to get the goalkeeper out of position, you're trying to get them to commit to a dive, and then you have a clear goal or something. In terms of fooling the goalkeeper with your shot, I've never seen that as a viable way to score, which is weird because in real life, shooting on target is generally the best way to attack the goal, right? I feel like what needs to happen here is the range that goalkeepers have when they dive needs to be reduced. So for example, if I pass the ball into the box on the ground, if a goalkeeper decides to dive high, he should not suddenly have the ball warp into his hands. If he dives if he does a mid dive and I shoot high, he shouldn't suddenly have the ball, warp into his hands. It feels like they still have too much range, too much power, and a lot of the time what will happen is games will be low-scoring affairs. I have a game up here as an example that was an anomaly, but it's not the norm based on what I've seen. Generally, again, what will happen if the goalkeepers are any good, they'll generally be able to just cover the goal, and unless it's like a big attack on like a 2 versus 1 or something, they generally have the advantage. I know Flowclap said they want the goalkeeper to be viewed as the final boss, but I think that's a bad design perspective because this isn't Sifu. I've played Sifu, I've played the hell out of that game. I understand the concept and I understand what they're going for, but this is a sports game, right? It's a team game, it's a sports game. The idea should be that the goal is vulnerable. Everybody wants to protect the goal. It shouldn't be the goalkeeper has all this power and he's hard to get past so everyone can kind of leave it up to him. He needs to be supported. He needs to be beatable from a variety of different angles with a variety of different shots. If he does manage to make a save, it shouldn't be like a automatic suction where he just holds the ball and now suddenly he has possession of the ball. His teammates need to understand that he's trying to get a hand on the ball. They need to be there to get the rebound. They have too much power. They shouldn't be treated like a boss character. They should be treated like any other player on the field. Because again, goals are kind of hard to come by unless you're constantly shooting at a goalkeeper who's out of position, or there's like something weird with the latency where maybe he rolls back or he's late on the dive or something like that. We need shooting on target to be more viable than it actually is right now. Because right now, people aren't going to want to do it because more often than not, the goalkeeper is just going to take the ball and, your turn's over. So I feel like that needs to be resolved. There also needs to be more of an incentive to play team football. I know we have points for passing, and I know that we got the change to dribble moves. I like that, by the way, the fact that dribble moves are no longer invincible. So, if someone's ball hogging and they're just chaining moves over and over again, they're more likely to lose the ball. And so it's more like it's a one-off move you use to create space, and then you try to get the ball forward by passing. Game still doesn't do enough to incentivize team play. I've played quite a few matches by now, just in this beta, that go from level 5 to level 10 and do my placement matches. And it's a mixed bag. You'll have people chasing the ball, they have to get a foot on the ball no matter what happens, run out of position. A lot of football, if this is going to be a serious, if this is going to be more of a realistic style of game, football is more so about positioning than it is about touching the ball, right? You get into position, you make runs, you disrupt the defense, you stretch them out, you make someone mark you, they make space, you give your guys options. And on defense, you're leaving you're leaving a certain side of the field to a certain player. If you're playing the center, the DM, the CB, and someone's on the wing is his responsibility. You don't chase the ball, you don't run into that space. But a lot of the times when you play games in a rematch, it's just about chasing the ball, being out of position. A lot of the time that makes things a lot harder. You're trying to pass, you're going to pass to the wing, you're in the center, you won the ball. You expect someone to be on the wing, but they ran to the center because they have to get a hand on the ball. It's like you're tackling to win the ball, someone's all the way out of position, they have to get a foot on the ball so they slide and mess things up. There needs to be more incentive to hold your position, to make runs, to play team football, and understand that you don't always need to touch the ball. I feel like there needs to be points for like proper positioning. There needs to be points for marking your man. There needs to be points for like making runs and things like that. Receiving the ball on a run, I feel like you should get points for that as well. There needs to be more incentive for players to want to pass the ball around. Right now, this game is very dribble first, pass second heavy, when it should really be pass first, dribble second. And I understand passing's difficult, but a lot of the time it's because people just really aren't taking the time to do it. I mean, it's omnidirectional. You have the mini map. You can call for the ball and you can see an arrow to the next player, to your teammate. So it has all the tools necessary to make team ball viable. But there's nothing really incentivizing guys to say, let me pass the ball instead of try to dribble and take it down the field, So I feel like you really need to start rewarding players for playing football as opposed to treating it like, they're just going to go in there and they're going to be the hero, they're going to be Messi, they're going to be Ronaldo, whoever, and they're just going to do everything themselves and then, ball hog and this, that, and the third. They're not going to cross the ball, they're going to try to take bad angle shots, and, it's just a lot of selfish football going on. I've played a few games where it's very selfless, and it feels like the game is at its best in that situation, where guys are passing the ball around, 1-2s, passing it back to a DM who has a better look on the field, taking their time, making runs, getting into position. It plays great like that, but that's only because, it feels like it's a dime a dozen, or rather it feels like it's an anomaly. Like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be like ball hogging, not really passing, drifting out of position, all sorts of stuff, right? Need more incentive there, because until that happens, it's really just going to be this game that you play to kick the ball around for a while and then you move on. It's never going to be taken seriously as a competitive sports game on any level until you guys actually do something to make that more attractive than it currently is. Do it with points, do it with gameplay mechanics, I don't know. Figure it out, because it's not great right now. It feels like one of those games where Slow Clap thinks that we're going to have squads that we can team up with, and then we'll handle it that way. But honestly, I don't think this game's going to have enough of an audience to make that viable. I think it's mainly going to be like solo queue with bots thrown in. Yeah, but figure that out. That's my next biggest issue. And of course, the goalkeeper power. I don't think you should treat them like final bosses. Treat them like goalkeepers in other football games. You guys aren't doing something unique. You're not reinventing the wheel. You know, you have decades of football games of various types to take into consideration, as well as real life football. The goalkeeper should be someone who protects the goal, not like Sean or, you know, one of the guys from Sifu. That's just silly. I'm going to end it here, and hopefully this is useful. Again, I don't give feedback through Discord because Discord's a mess. I really don't want to deal with the noise over there and the hassle. I'd rather just send it directly.